Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm back to take a first look at this Week 14 NFL DFS slate on Draftkings. Before we get into it, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any future content that I upload. That would be greatly appreciated. And I have released multiple Patreon packages where you can get access to a bunch of different data sheets, important statistics that will help you in winning some money and determining the best plays, as well as projections, rankings, and all that fun stuff. So that's linked below in the description if interested. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this Week 14 slate. Taking a first look at it. Right now, I have all the top salary guys, the studs at the top on my spreadsheet up, and really just wanting to take a look at game by game, figuring out some different pace spots that maybe we want to target, some spots where there may be some weak secondaries, etc. So this first game, Tennessee at Jacksonville, does come in with a pretty hefty over-under, and I do really like the pace of the game. It's looking to grade out as a very good one to target in my model because, like I said, I'm thinking that this one's going to just kind of zoom around. Ryan Tannehill, a guy that I was really high on last week, and a guy that looks to be in another very good spot here. It's a 53.5 over-under with a 30.5 implied total for his side. And then on the Jacksonville side of the ball, they have a 23 implied total. So the only thing that's a little bit worrisome is that, as far as Tannehill is concerned, is that they are kind of a bit of a hefty favorite as far as the spread's concerned. But that does come in favor for a guy like Derrick Henry out of the backfield at 8-7 this week, who had a bit of a down week last week. But I do expect to bounce back this week. He only had 6.9 DK points last week after putting up that 41.5 point performance in Week 12. But I do think that that's going to be straightened out this week, because when you're looking at the matchup, I'm looking at my running back matchup chart and how these Jaguars have fared against the running back position. They have been very bad, the fourth best team to target in terms of DK points given up a game. The running backs giving it up as far as receiving yards out of the backfield, giving it up on the ground. And as I had mentioned, if with the spread the way it is at a 7.5 favorite for these Tennessee Titans, I wouldn't be surprised if they get up in this game and they're having to pound the rock. So Derrick Henry looks to be a good play this week out of the gates in this one with the pace and everything. And then another guy that I definitely have interest in is A.J. Brown at the top at 7.3. He grades out as a pretty good play in my model when taking a first look at the slate. And he comes in at a 7.3 price tag, and as mentioned, a 30.5 total with his target share. Last week, he didn't really get most of the targets. It was mostly spread around to other wide receivers, unfortunately, as far as he's concerned. But I do think that this is a spot to get back on target for him, because if you look at his target share, he's got 7, 6, 7 targets the last 3 weeks. So he is getting the ball thrown his way. So I definitely do have interest in him. And then it'll be interesting to see Jonnu Smith's injury status, because he was out last week and it opened up some value for us. And if that's the case, we might be going back to a guy like a Ferkser. I'm not quite sure. I mean, he was only 2.5 last week. Now he's 3.6. So like I said, it's kind of a first look right here. But as we're breaking these games down and determining some injury situations, that might be one that makes sense. And then on the other side of the ball, this Tennessee team has been very bad as well at defending the pass. Not doing a good job of keeping guys in front of them, which means we might have some interest in these Jags wide receivers because, like I said, the secondary is just not really looking the greatest for these Tennessee Titans. So as far as who I would be going to, it probably all starts with DJ Chark at the top. He's the guy that's getting the most targets in this offense, and he comes in at a 5.3 price tag this week on Draftkings. Looking at his game log real quick, 7, 8, 5 targets the last 3 weeks after getting 12 targets in Week 9 and putting up 30.6 DK points. And with this matchup against Tennessee, and with the spread being the way it is with them playing behind, I do think he can get back on track with another big game, because the Tennessee Titans are the second best team to target in terms of wide receivers, giving up 43.1 DK points a game to wide receivers. It all kind of matches up for a guy like DJ Chark in this matchup, because they're going to be playing from behind most likely. They're going to have to throw the ball. and that's when a guy like him can capitalize, not to mention James Robinson out of the backfield, also a potential candidate. So that's enough about that game. Moving on to the Houston-Chicago game and the guys I like in this one. Not really the most top pace game on the week, so not really sure how much interest I'm going to have in this one. I actually highlighted Desean Watson earlier when I was recording or going over some game notes because he's a guy that's been really popular as of late, and a guy that is a fantasy stud, but with only a 45.5 over-under, and this game projected to play at a really slow pace, not really sure that I'm wanting to go here, and it's still at 7-6. I don't really think that his price warrants playing him. 24.4 DK points last week, 36, 34 the 2 weeks before, but in much better matchups than this Chicago Bears team because we're looking at how they fared against QBs. They do have a very strong secondary. They are the 26th best team to target in terms of DK points given up a game to QBs. So clearly a very good defense. And the over-under and the pace in this game just looks pretty dreadful. So, if I'm going to anyone in this game, it's probably going to be running backs if the matchups align. And when looking at the Bears and the Texans as far as how they fared against the run, you can see, not really somewhere we're getting all too excited about either because the Bears are the 25th best against the run, or the 25th worst team to target, 25th best team to target, so not really wanting to go there. And then as far as the Texans are concerned, that's where I do get interested because they are very bad against the run. So as far as who I'm targeting in this game, it really only comes down to David Montgomery. And he's a guy that has been a very popular option the last couple weeks. And I think he should continue to be in this one just with the matchup. He did get a price bump up, though, because he was only 5.5 last week. And now he's up to 6.5 on Draftkings. So we got a 1,000-point price increase. But if you look at his last 2 games, 27 and 28 DK points. And the volume, he's getting 17 attempts last game. I do think that he's still a possibility. I mean, he's getting a little steep in price compared to the 5.5, the 5.3 range, where it was just easy to throw him in there. So it'll be interesting to take a look at how my projections like him later in the week. But right now, just from a matchup standpoint, he does make sense. Moving on to the Denver-Carolina game. This one's going to be interesting because we no longer have to worry about a wide receiver and playing quarterback for the Denver Broncos. So Drew Lock is back, and this game comes in with a 46.5 over-under. Not really projecting to play at too quick of a pace here, and the big news will be whether Christian McCaffrey will be back. Comes in with a 9.2K price tag. Coach Matt Rule said that he's hopeful McCaffrey will be available, but his status isn't quite cleared up yet, so I haven't projected as out currently just until we get that news. Then he'll be put in my projection model. But a 46.5 over-under, not really projected to move at too quick of a pace. And when looking at how these two defenses align, Carolina and Denver, we can see that the Panthers are the 11th best team to target in terms of QBs, so through the air, and the Broncos are the 19th best team to target. So as far as who has the advantage through the air, it would definitely be the Broncos. On the ground, not really too excited to target anyone, I don't think, because the Panthers are bad against the run, but there's a little bit of a volume share here on this Denver backfield, so not sure if I'm looking to go there. 15 attempts last week for Melvin Gordon compared to Phillip Lindsay's 14 attempts. So kind of a split backfield there, which makes it difficult to really want to promote either of these guys. So that's where I'm at as far as that's concerned. And then through the air, Jerry Jeudy's a guy that you definitely could target. Taking on this Carolina team. The only problem is his volume has been down. After seeing 8 targets and 8 targets in weeks 10 and 11, it's down to 1 and 4 the last couple weeks. And then as how far as how the tight end position goes, A guy like Noah Fant, who comes in at 4-1, taking on the Panthers. He did receive 7 targets last week. He's a guy that we're waiting to break out, so he might be an interesting candidate in this one. Taking on this Panthers team, who rates out to be the 8th best team to target in terms of DK points given up a game to tight ends. So Font could be an interesting one, but other than that, it really comes down to targeting a guy like Robbie Anderson, and whether or not this Carolina-Denver game turns into a shootout it's not looking too likely, to be honest. I mean, Panthers and Broncos both have a pretty good secondary, 24th best for the Broncos and 18th best for the Panthers. So overall, this game I just don't have a ton of interest in, scanning through the options. It'll be interesting, maybe a guy like a Mike Davis or a Christian McCaffrey, depending upon their activation status. But we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Minnesota, Tampa Bay. Dalvin Cook at the top, of course, is the guy that we always have to talk about at 9-4. And when looking at the over-under in this one, it does come in with a 52.5 over-under right now, a 23 implied total for Dalvin Cook's team, and they come in as 6.5-point underdogs to these Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And projected to play at a pretty decent pace, so definitely a game we might want to have some interest in here. And where I'm looking to go, Justin Jefferson's a guy I've been promoting every single week because they just refuse to price him up. They're finally kind of catching on, I think, because he's at 7-4 this week. And I've promoted him the last 2 weeks, and he's put up 30 and 26 DK points. He's been a guy that's been on my final look video consistently here. Be interesting to see how he grades out at the end of the week and whether I'm interested in playing him. But I can tell you one thing, that the Buccaneers do provide a pretty good matchup to him because they're the 7th best team to target in terms of wide receivers. So I do think that stacking up this Washington Vikings team does make sense. And then when looking at how they fared against QBs, they're the 13th best team to target, giving up 19.3 DK points a game to QBs. So you could definitely go ahead and throw in a Kirk Cousins with his weapons on the outside, in a Justin Jefferson and an Adam Thielen, which you would never think that Adam Thielen would be priced below Jefferson, but that's the exact case that we're dealing with now. And then on the other side of the ball, as far as these Tampa Bay Bucks are concerned, the Vikings do provide, a relatively good matchup. 18th best team to target for QBs on the ground, and how they fared against running backs. They're the 18th best team to target as well. And then for wide receivers, the Vikings are the 4th best team to target. So that's where it gets interesting, these wideouts on the outside. Both sides of the ball in this one, you can definitely have some interest in the passing game. A guy like Mike Evans on the outside, Chris Godwin. 9 targets, 11 targets the last 3 weeks for Mike Evans. He's starting to put up some big numbers. He scored the last 3 games, 2 TDs last time out. Him and Tom Brady appear to have some chemistry going. So I wouldn't mind stacking, Tom up with Mike Evans. Chris Godwin as well, definitely seeing some volume, 9, 10 targets the last 2 weeks. He got in the end zone in Week 11, failed to see the end zone in Week 12, but still put up 17.7 DK points with those 8 receptions. So you like to see that. So, I mean, this game definitely has some shootout potential, definitely some guys that we could have interest in targeting. And I do think that Kyle Rudolph is a good option as well at the tight end position. Early on, looking at my projections, he's graded out to be a pretty good play. And as far as how the Bucs have been against tight ends, they're not really a team that I'm too fearful of because they are the 10th best team to target, giving up 13.4 DK points a game to the tight end position. So really interested in this one, I think. It would be great to see how these guys grade out my projections later on in the week with their salaries and everything projecting them. But as far as the pace and everything is concerned, definitely a viable game to target this week. Arizona and the Giants. This one comes in with kind of a lackluster total, honestly. Looking at the total right now, it comes in at a 45.5 over-under. And the pace isn't projected to be all that great. And then I'm not really all that interested in this Arizona passing attack because the Giants secondary has been very good this year. 30th best team to target for QBs. Not really a spot that I'm looking to go to. Kyler Murray, I'm not really interested in. And then as far as, wideouts, DeAndre Hopkins is the guy that you're typically wanting to target. And the Giants have been pretty good against wide receivers as well, 19th. So not really a place we're really looking to go on the Cardinals side of the ball, to be honest. And I don't really have interest in their running game either. As of now, Kenyon Drake's, Chase Edmonds, kind of splitting the backfield. So I'm not all too interested in that. On the Giants side of the ball, Colt McCoy led that win this past week. So it'd be interesting to see if he's still in the game or if this week, or if it's Daniel Jones. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. But then as far as, if I'm looking to target any of their running backs or wide receivers, the Cardinals are the 16th best team again to target for running backs. And as far as wide receivers are concerned, they're the 11th best team. So there are some spots that we might be able to take advantage of here, and a guy like Wayne Gallman, who has come into this offense and has seen quite a bit of volume, might be an interesting candidate this week because he comes in at 5'7". He had 16 attempts last week, 24, 18, 14, getting a lot of volume in these last 4 weeks. Failed to see the end zone last week for the first time in 3 weeks, and he still put up 16.5 DK points, and he comes in the mid 5K range. So I do think that Wayne Gallman could be an interesting candidate here. I have to keep an eye on that one. That would be my overall breakdown on that one. Those are the places I'm looking to go in that game. The Kansas City-Miami game, not really too sure that I'm looking to go here too much. Patrick Mahomes does grade out to be a pretty good play. The only problem is, they're expected to be pretty heavy favorites in this one. 7.5 point favorites, 28 implied team total for his team, and the pace is just kind of dreadful in this one. Not really projecting for there to be a lot of snaps. And then when looking at how these two defenses have performed, the Chiefs and the Dolphins, 20th best team to target for QBs for the Chiefs, and then the Dolphins have been a very good secondary at being the 24th best team to target. So not that I'm all too worried about any matchup when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. It's just that he is 8-1. You're going to have to pay for him, and the pace is going to be slow on top of, the projected over-under, etc. So Salvon Ahmed is questionable. The one thing I am interested in this game probably is going to be Myles Gaskin, because I do think that he's going to continue to see volume if he's the only running back in the backfield. And he gets to take on a Chiefs team who I'm not the most concerned about when it comes to stopping the run. 14th best team to target in terms of running backs. And I do think that Myles Gaskin could be an interesting play this week. After seeing 21 attempts last week, he didn't really have the most impressive game. After seeing 21 attempts, you would think he'd score more than 15 DK points, but it's not like that's terrible. And he actually dropped in price. Last week he was at 5'9". This week he's down to 5'6". So if he's still the only running back in that backfield, I definitely have interest in him. And then this Dallas-Cincinnati game is one that I'm definitely going to have some interest in, because this game projects to be at a very quick pace in my model. And of course, Ezekiel Elliot at the top. It all starts with him in the run game when it comes to Dallas, which we'll get into here. But overall, really what stands out to me is the projected pace that I have for this game, because I have this game to move at a very impressive rate. 69 projected snaps for the Cowboys, 67 for the Cincinnati Bengals. The over-under isn't out right now, but even if it's not the most impressive over-under, I do have a feeling I'm still going to have interest in this game, because if my model projects for there to be a lot of snaps, I'm always interested, because even if the over-under isn't the most impressive, I think that allows me to get an edge in the field, seeing who gets the most snaps, etc. And then, the Cowboys have been a less than stellar secondary, so they're one that we're always looking to target. And then as far as the Bengals are concerned, well, first the Cowboys, 12th best team to target for QBs. Bengals, 16th best team. Not really too concerned about that. As far as on the ground, we're always looking to play Zeke if we can. 15th best team to target for the Bengals. Cowboys are the 8th best team to target. So I think you get the theme here. Both defenses are pretty underwhelming, and the Cowboys are 5th best team to target for wide receivers, and the Bengals are the 16th best team to target. So I'm just interested in pretty much anyone that has a heavy involvement in either of these offenses. And, of course, it all starts with the QBs. So, first, Andy Dalton at 5-5 for these Dallas Cowboys. A little bit of a revenge game narrative going on because he gets to go back and take on his former team. And it really just comes down to his salary and the spot he's in. I do think this is a great spot for him to go out there and have a good game. And then as far as on the Cincinnati side of things, we'll have to keep an eye on Brandon Allen's status because he might be back in this one. He might not. I'm not quite sure. He was forced out of Sunday's game and then replaced by QB Ryan Finley. So I can't really speak on who I'm stacking up there. But Joe Mixon does continue to be out on the Cincinnati side of the ball. So Gio Bernard, I do think, will be an interesting option this week. He's really failed us so far, not really putting up impressive numbers at all. And I do think that this is a spot that he can get back on track because, as I mentioned, the Cowboys aren't exactly the best against the run. And specifically, they have struggled in the receiving category. When looking at my receiving category as far as how these Cowboys have fared, they are giving up quite a bit of statistics to pass-catching running backs, and Gio Bernard definitely falls into that category. So be interesting to see how he grades out my model later in the week. But first look, he does look interesting. And then Ezekiel Elliot, a guy that's only 6'6", a guy that we're used to paying way up for, has had a very bad season, but I tend to think, this is the spot we can jump on and he can have a good game because all the stars kind of align for him to be able to pound the rock and get in the end zone. And then the wideouts, I'm definitely going to have some interest in. Amari Cooper, Tyler Boyd, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins. Both of these offenses, those top four guys are really the ones that are seeing the volume. So the share of the offense and targets is very condensed, what you like to see. So I'll definitely have some interest in that one. This New York Jets-Seattle Seahawks game grades out to be one that I do have some interest in from a value aspect for sure because I do think these Jets wide receivers are too cheap for the matchup. These Seattle Seahawks have been very, very bad this year. And I think that we can jump on some of these Jets wide receivers looking at this slate first because I think they're too cheap. 13.5-point favorite. The Seattle Seahawks come in as with a 30.5 implied total, so they're projected to score a ton of points. To get out in this one early, DK Metcalf, an absolute beast, a guy that we have to have interest in every single week, and definitely the guy that I want to start talking about first because he's out there for a ton of snaps. He gets a ton of targets. He goes down the field. He gets targeted downfield. His upside is just ridiculous. 8 targets, 13 targets, 5 targets the last 3 weeks. Put up that 30 spot against Philly in Week 12, and then against the Giants, he kind of came back down to earth with only 13. But in this spot, taking on these New York Jets, we saw last week against the Raiders kind of how bad this Jets D is, and I think that this is a spot that they're going to continue to show kind of how bad they are. 10th best team to target in terms of wide receivers. Definitely have interest in DK Metcalf, and you can definitely have interest in Tyler Lockett as well, and Chris Carson because they're projected to get out and ahead of this one. And he should get the work on the ground once they get ahead. So, yeah, definitely have interest in that side. But really, the New York Jets wide receivers are just too cheap in my opinion. And I have a ton of interest in both Crowder and Denzel Mims. Jamison Crowder last week put up a big game, 2 TDs, 7 targets, 21.7 DK points. And he can keep it going against the Seattle Seahawks team because they are just a terrible secondary. They are no longer the Legion of Boom. They are the very first best team to target, giving up 48.2 DK points a game to wide receivers. So all these Jets wide receivers I do think are viable. And don't forget about Denzel Mims at only 4-1. He had a solid game last week, for his price tag. He hasn't really seen a ton of upside as a problem, but he's been consistent. 10, 10, 10, and 8 DK points. 3 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets. I look for him to have a big upside game one of these weeks, and if he's going to have one, it definitely makes sense for him to have it this week because they literally have the best possible matchup that you could have. Breaking down the rest of these games. Indianapolis, Las Vegas. Darren Waller having a huge game last week and has a much worse matchup this week against the Indianapolis Colts because, the Colts are a pretty good defense overall. So, and be interesting to see if he draws any ownership after that big performance. A 50.5 over-under is a pretty respectable number in this one. And I do have the game to be projected at a fairly decent pace, but when looking at how the Colts have fared and their defense is concerned, it was 27th best team to target for QBs. So I do think that Derek Carr is going to have kind of a tough day. And then as far as, Darren Waller, our number one guy to target in this offense, the Colts are the 30th best team to target for tight ends. So not really looking to go to the Raiders side of the ball this week, to be honest. If I'm looking anywhere, it's probably going to be on the Indy side of the ball, where they get to take on a Raiders team that is the 10th best team to target for QB. So I'm not really too concerned about Phillip Rivers having difficulties in this one. So, he would be the first spot that I'm looking at. Maybe a guy like a Jonathan Taylor in the backfield taking on the Raiders as well, because it's not like the Raiders are an elite run defense, the 5th best team to target against the run, and they have been giving up quite a few statistics in the pass-catching category as well, which we know these Indianapolis Colts do like to pass the ball as well out of the backfield to a guy like Hines, as well as Jonathan Taylor. Both are involved in the pass game a little bit, more so Hines, of course, but 3 targets last week for Jonathan Taylor. He got in the end zone. He had 22.5 DK points, and looking at Hines' numbers, he had 12 DK points last week on 3 targets. So both of these guys are getting very involved, and they both come in with a very good matchup. And then, of course, on the outside, you can always target a guy like T.Y. Hilton or Michael Pittman. Those are the 2 guys I'm looking to go to in this one. T.Y. Hilton with a big game last week. He looks to be back on track after having a terrible season to start things out. He has 28 and 18 DK points the last 2 weeks. So definitely a guy you could be playing this week. And Michael Pittman Jr. comes in at a 5K price tag. He's seen 5 targets, 9 targets the last 2 weeks. Hasn't seen a big upside game after putting up 15 and 22 DK points 2 weeks before. But a good spot to get back on track. Those are the guys I'd be looking to. This Green Bay-Detroit game is the one that is really standing out from an over-under aspect. I think that this is a great spot for Davonte Adams at 9-3. An absolute target share beast, an absolute fantasy beast overall. This one's looking real juicy because a 55.5 over-under, 31.5 implied total for his team, a 7.5 point spread, and the Detroit Lions are not a secondary that I fear, especially when we're talking about Davonte Adams, the 9th best team to target in terms of wide receivers. Not concerned at all as far as how QB is concerned, and Aaron Rodgers' outlook, they're the 9th best team to target. So I definitely like the Packers side of the ball, and a 7.5 point spread will open up some interest in Aaron Jones as well. If they get out in front of this one, they will be running the ball a bunch. And Aaron Jones, after putting up 26.8 DK points last week, I think he can keep it rolling in this one with the matchup. Everything matches up. And then on the Detroit Lions side of the ball, they will be playing from behind. So that always makes you have a little bit more interest in a guy like Matthew Stafford, who is priced at a, pretty respectable price tag at only 5.7 in the high 5K range. It's not like I'm too worried about him being too priced up. And he's going to have to sling it is the bottom line. If they're going to get down in this game, he's going to have to throw the ball. And then the Packers and how they fared against QBs, they have been a very respectable defense, 25th best team to target for QBs. And as far as how wide receivers are concerned, clearly they're doing a good job in the passing game because they haven't given up a bunch of them either. 26th best team to target. So good over-under, playing from behind in this one. Unfortunately, the matchup isn't the greatest, but I do think that you could be targeting these Lions wide receivers, the guys that are going to have to put up numbers. It all starts with Marvin Jones, of course, at 5'8". 12 targets the last 2 weeks. You love to see that. A lot of involvement. And it will be very interesting to see if Kenny Golladay comes back, if he's good to go. We'll have to keep an eye on the news. But he was spotted doing some sprints in the end zone pregame last time out. And it's looking like he's nearing a return. If he comes back, I'm going to have a ton of interest in him at only 6K on Draftkings if we find out that he's a full go. So I'll have to keep an eye on that one. 3 games left, guys. Just going to try to get through all of them. Determining some top spots. The Washington-San Francisco game. Antonio Gibson did get banged up last week out, so he does have a questionable tag, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Got banged up with a knee injury and didn't return in that Pittsburgh game, so going to have to keep an eye on his injury status. It'll be interesting to see him. Not that he's in the best matchup because this Washington and San Francisco team, both of them have very good defenses. 6-7 for Antonio Gibson if he does play. And like I said, no promises that he does, so let's keep an eye on it. But the over-under isn't out. I don't think this game is going to have a high over-under because, like I said, both of these teams are just um, really good defenses. And to be honest with you, that's kind of all I have to say. And I think we can just kind of skip over this one because I'm not going to have interest in really anyone unless I'm, for some reason, finding out that someone's underpriced later on in the week in my model. I'll bring that to your attention on my final look video, but not interested in that one. Next spot that we have to talk about is this Saints Philadelphia Eagles game, where the over-under right now is at 45.5 and 65 or 66 projected snaps for me in my model. 26 implied total for the New Orleans Saints. So that's fairly respectable. And then as far as the Eagles side is concerned, I'm not really sure that this is the best matchup. It's going to be interesting to see who they start at QB, if it's going to be Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz. So that's something that is going to be interesting to keep an eye on because those are two different dynamics. And I can tell you that regardless of who starts, I think they might be a good value just strictly because of their price tags and having to play from behind in this one. And then looking at the Saints pass D and how they fared, they are a very, very good pass D. 29th best team to target in terms of QBs. So, it's not that this is the best matchup for the Eagles, but it is more so that they're probably going to be playing from behind. So it'd be interesting. I think that they might be some good targets in this one and this week. And it'll be interesting to see if Jalen Hurts starts. He's a guy that can get it done on the ground. He can get it done in the air. So we might have some high upside at only a 5-1 price tag. Might be chalky. You have to keep an eye on that one. But, yeah. And then on the Saints side of the ball, of course, we have another athletic QB in Taysom Hill who can get it done on the ground and through the air. And they do have a pretty respectable total, as mentioned. And the Eagles aren't really the best matchup. 21st best team to target in terms of QBs. However, when looking at the running back position, it really doesn't change, and it actually gets worse. 24th best team to target in terms of running backs and wide receivers. Not looking too much better, but in respect to their run stopping ability, it is a lot better. 15th best team to target, and that's where my interest becomes apparent because I do think that we can go ahead and play a Michael Thomas at 7-1 this week on DraftKings, a guy that is a well-known name in fantasy if you've been playing for a while. He had 11 targets last week and had 22.5 DK points on 9 receptions. He wasn't able to get in the end zone. So that just goes to show this guy's upside because he had the 100-yard bonus, didn't even get in the end zone. He still put up 22.5 DK points, and he is only 7-1 still. I think he's a guy that might be priced up, in the 8K range eventually. So we can take advantage while we can. And I saved the very, very best for last, so I hope you stuck around because this Atlanta Falcons Los Angeles Chargers game is one that I have a ton of interest in this week. This one looks to project at a very high pace. Both defenses don't scare me at all. Both offenses I have a ton of interest in. It starts at the top with Keenan Allen at 7-7, a target share beast. I got this game projected for 71 total snaps as far as his team's concerned. They have 23.5 total. And yeah, I don't know. This game looks to project scary good in my model. QBs, the Falcons are the #1 team to target for QBs. So, Justin Herbert's a guy that I'm going to have a ton of interest in this week. I'm sure he's going to have some ownership, but I don't care because I expect him to have a very, very good game, and he really struggled last week. The Patriots absolutely embarrassed the Chargers. He only had 6.36 DK points, and I think that this is a great spot for him to bounce back because, yeah, I don't know. I cannot speak enough about how much I love this game. I think I made that clear, but there's weapons to go around. There's options. Austin Eckler in the backfield. He only comes in at 7K. This Falcons D doesn't scare me as far as how they've fared against running backs. And Austin Eckler is a target share beast. The Falcons are the 29th best team to target in terms of running backs. So they've been very, very good against the running back position on paper. But what you'll notice is as you go kind of towards the middle of my sheet here, there's a little more green showing up. And that's because that's the receiving category. So I think that Austin Eckler has some sneaky upside in a matchup that people might fare away from because they see that the Falcons are good against the running back position. But I don't care because, as I mentioned, his involvement in the pass game. Todd Gurley, a guy that has seen 8 attempts in 8 attempts the last 2 weeks after seeing 19 and 18, 23 the 3 weeks before. And Coach Raheem Morris said he expects Gurley to have a larger role during Sunday's game against the Chargers. So all that kind of matches up. And then the Chargers are the 11th best team to target in terms of running backs. They don't scare me at all. Wide receivers, these Chargers and Falcons. The Falcons are the 3rd best team to target. The Chargers are the lost them on my sheet here. Give me a second. 30th best team target. So the Chargers secondary has stood out a little more. But like I said, they're not slowing down the QB position. They're the first team to target in terms of QBs. And as far as the wide receiver position is concerned, I think the Falcons have some elite wide receivers that, with the pace of the game and with the projected total, all this fun stuff, I just don't care. It comes down to the total. It comes down to the projection as far as snaps. It comes down to the opportunity. I love Julio Jones. I love Calvin Ridley. I love Keenan Allen for sure. Keenan Allen is going to be a top priority of mine this week. He gets a ton of targets, 11, 10, and 19 the last 3 weeks. I think he's going to go off. And yeah, I mean, just have a ton of interest in this game. If I didn't make that apparent, I hope I did, because, you know, Matt Ryan on the other side, you could always play. And I just like everything that shows up on paper in that game. So made that clear. And that is a first look at this Week 14 NFL DFS slate on Draftkings. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time that I upload new content. That would be greatly appreciated. And don't forget about my Patreon packages where you can get access to all these sheets. I try to give you guys as much information as possible in these videos, but I can't quite cram in all the stuff that I do behind the scenes. So if you're interested in getting my rankings, my power rankings, my cheat sheet, and all that fun stuff, link below in the description. Greatly appreciate your support, guys. That's the first look at this Week 14 slate, and we will see you in the next video.